Hi guys, welcome to my channel. If you got code C1391 and you got a bill for like $2,500 to get this code repaired, this video is for you. I just went through this process, through this issue with this code on our 2013 Toyota Prius, and I'd like to share my story, how I got this problem fixed, so you can benefit from my mistakes, and maybe you'll get an answers to the questions, some of your questions. Before I got through this repair, I had few questions and I couldn't find anything online to answer those questions. So hopefully you'll get an answers. So first, if your car has high mileage and you got this code, then most likely you have a problem and you will have to replace your actuator and the pump. I wish there was a magic button that you press and this problem goes away, but if you got a high mileage, those things are gonna have to be replaced. But this repair is not as intimidating as it seems, at least to me. When I got a code on our car and I started looking online, it looked pretty intimidating, especially, you know, when you get an issue, you always hoping that it's just a small, you know, 5-minute repair or just clearing the code and problem goes away. You don't expect that you're gonna have to go in and replace major ABS components, and then you have to bleed your ABS, your brake system. So yeah, most likely there are several things that can leak, but if you got a high mileage, from what I've seen on forums online, if you got a high mileage, you're gonna have to replace your actuator and the pump. So first, the tools. There's not much special tools you're gonna need. One special tool that you will have to use is something like this. It's a number 10 wrench, and it's got swivel ratchet. So this one is must have for this project. There's gonna be 2 nuts on the pump that is gonna be really hard to get to, and this is the tool that is gonna help you. Everyone talks about those nuts as a worst part of this project. It wasn't for me, especially with this tool. It's inconvenient because you have to get your hands in tight spaces, but this wasn't the worst part of this project, but I'll get to that in a little bit. The other special tool you're gonna need is a scanner, and not everybody has a scanner. Fortunately I do have a good scanner, but there are options online that you can purchase. It's a little cable, can't remember the name of it, and it comes with a CD, and it will give you an option to use your laptop as a scan tool, and it costs only, like, as low as I've seen was like $25, anywhere from $25 to $50. It's affordable, but from what I read online, people complain that it's a little bit hard to install the software, but it's doable. So if you got one of these, and if you can afford to get that software and that little cable, then you will be able to do this job. And like I said, I would highly recommend do it yourself. It's not as bad as it looks. It actually took me 45 minutes to replace an actuator. Because I had to do it twice, I only filmed replacing an actuator. But once you remove actuator, your pump is going to be right there. So you're going to spend probably another 20 minutes or so replacing the pump. So it's very much doable. And yeah, so let me show you the car, and I'm just gonna show you steps, which steps you're gonna have to go through. I'm not gonna go into details showing you every single bolt and every single clamp and hose. It's all gonna be pretty much self-explanatory. So let's go to the car and I'll show you just in general what we're gonna have to go through. Okay, so the very first thing you're gonna have to remove is this cowl, this wipers and cowl. You're gonna remove 2 wipers. It's a number 14. Then you're gonna remove the plastic, and then there's gonna be a motor for the wipers and metal cowl that goes from one side to another. Most of this stuff is 10 millimeters, so it's really easy to remove. You're gonna be able to remove it within a couple of minutes. Then I would remove this reservoir, the brake fluid reservoir, with the bracket. Bracket actually goes to strut tower, and it's mounted with the 14 millimeter bolts. So remove that one, and it's got one more 10 millimeter on the bottom. So you're gonna move it aside, and you will have a clear access to your actuator. Actuator mounted with 4 bolts, 4 nuts, and those nuts are gonna be on the inside of the car. You're gonna have to go down over there, and you will see those 4 nuts that are holding actuator. You will also have to remove a pin that connects actuator with the brake pedal. That was one of the hardest part of this project, is install that pin. To remove it, it was easy, but to align it, it took me quite a few minutes to align it. What I actually did, I took 3/8 of an inch drill bit, and I used that drill bit as a guide, aligning actuator with the pedal, and then I would feed the actual pin through the other side. But it's simple procedure, but it took me a little while to align it. So hopefully you're not gonna have this issue. So once you disconnect all your hoses, the metal lines from actuator, and you disconnect it from the inside, unplug the electrical plug, and then you will be able to pull the actuator out. Once you pull the actuator out, you will have an access to the pump. Pump has 2 plugs, 2 connectors. You disconnect those connectors. It's mounted with 2 nuts. Like I mentioned earlier, you use that 10 millimeter swivel head wrench, and you'll be able to unscrew those nuts. Remove those 2 nuts, and you will get to the second hardest part of this project, is removing that pump from the bracket, because once you remove those nuts, you're gonna have to push this pump as far as you can this way, and then raise it up. You will have a couple of fuel lines, I believe those are fuel lines, in a way. You're gonna have to move those fuel lines to give you more room for pump to come out. And then you're gonna have to go and install pump basically the same way. You're gonna push as far as you can, pull it down, and put it on the bracket. You have to be very careful, because you're gonna have rubber mounts in your pump. Keep an eye on those rubber mounts so you don't lose them. And everything else is pretty much backwards. You just install everything, and then you will get to bleeding procedure. Bleeding procedure is going to be basically guided by your software. You just do everything that software tells you. You're going to start with the rear brakes. You're going to bleed those first, then you go to the front, bleed the front, and then the last procedure, which is also guided by the software, is going to be a linear valve offset. Okay, so for those of you who are curious like me, let me show you what the pump and actuator looks like when it's disassembled. There is not much benefit in this. It's just more of a curiosity, because I don't think you will be able to. I was hoping to see any kind of obvious leakage, but no, I couldn't see anything. Actually, on that note, stick around. After I show you these parts, I'm gonna tell you my story, how I figured that my problem was in an actuator and not the pump. And I will also tell you briefly my story, how I went from replacing it with used parts, and then I actually ended up buying actuator from a dealer, and I'll tell you why in a second. So let me show you these parts. Okay, so this is the pump. I took it apart. It looks, when it's assembled, it looks like this. What this is actually under the pressure. There's a yellow sign for a reason. You don't want to mess with this thing. There is a bulletin showing whenever technicians work on replacing these pumps, they actually cut this pump to release the pressure, I guess, on the inside. I'm not sure, but for those who are curious, this pump only has one check valve. So in my opinion, potential for this to be an issue is far less than potential over here. So my personal opinion, this would cause code 1391, internal abnormal leakage, a lot more than this. But it is recommended to replace both of these items. So that's the pump. That's the actual 12-volt motor. This is the pump itself. This is probably check valve, maybe not. Don't quote me on this. Maybe it is internal somewhere, but it looks like this is it. So this is the pump. This is the actuator, and these are the coils, electrical. These are the sensors, another sensor. These are the valves themselves. Leakage most likely happens somewhere on the inside of this thing, in my opinion. There's some kind of gasket, spacer gasket. I've seen people blaming this. I looked at it. I didn't see any evidence of leakage, but I could be wrong. And this is the master cylinder or actuator itself. So like I said, this is more of a curiosity than any benefit in finding a problem, because it's not that obvious. It's somewhere internal, I think. So let me tell you a story. I found a pump on car-parts.com from a junkyard for $150, and they were claiming that their car had 40,000 miles. I actually believed them and went for this pump. I found actuator locally at the junkyard for $50, and they didn't know the mileage of the car. So I kind of decided to take a chance, and because of it price was way too attractive for me, I decided to buy it and got it from junkyard locally. So I got both pieces and replaced both the pump and the actuator. And when I was doing, here's one of the mistakes that I made. When I was doing brake bleeding with the scan tool, bleeding all four wheels went through just fine. But when I got to linear valve offset, my scanner kept disconnecting from the car, and car itself didn't show any obvious signs that the battery was low. So I couldn't understand. I figured maybe because it's a third-party software, it's not Toyota's scanner. Maybe that's why. But light went away. I had no issue. Brakes felt okay. So I took a test drive. Everything looked normal. So I kind of decided, well, it drives fine, it brakes fine, so I'm just gonna leave it as it is and call it a successful repair. So it's actually my daughter's car. So she drove it for about like 3 days. And in about 3 days, 4 days, she tells me that the triangle came back. So I scan it and I get exactly the same code, 1391. And I was like, well, what's going on? Maybe because the linear offset didn't go through, maybe it caused leakage somehow. So I started doing this procedure. Basically, I did bleeding again, all the wheels, and I realized that my battery was not strong enough. So this time I actually connected a charger to the battery and started doing this programming. So the linear offset wouldn't go through. The process would start, and somewhere in the middle, it would the lights on the dash, they're supposed to start blinking. All the ABS traction lights supposed to start blinking fast when the procedure is done. And in my case, the lights would just light up somewhere in the middle of the process. So, but what I noticed, when this procedure would fail, my pump would stop pumping as it usually pumps consistently. Like it would pump, stop, and in about like 10 seconds it would pump again. So basically showing that there is a leakage. And when this offset, linear valve offset procedure failed, something was disabled inside, or I'm not sure exactly what's going on in an electrical part of this ABS system, but it would pump the pressure and then stop and would stay off. And when I check the pressure is actually translated into voltage. It's like 3.6 or something volts. And if there is a leakage, the voltage would drop. And if there is no leakage, voltage would stay. So when this linear valve offset procedure failed, it would disable some kind of valve or something on the inside, and the pressure stayed consistent. So basically, it told me that the issue is not in the pump. The issue is in the actuator. So if you got this code and you want to change only one item, which I don't recommend, I would still, if your car, like mine, has mine has 220,000 miles. If you can get parts from a donor car that has 50,000 or so, I would recommend replacing both the pump and the actuator. So if you have this code and you have a high mileage, try this. Try doing bleeding procedure and see if your linear valve offset process is going to go through. And if it fails, check your pressure. Check on a scan tool. There is every scan tool different, but you will have some kind of special functions or adjustments or active tests or something. I'm not sure what it's going to be called on your scanner, but you will see data, and I can't remember what it's called exactly in my scanner, but it's the pressure. It will have something to do with the pressure, and it will be in voltage, 3.6, maybe 3.8, something like that. That should be a normal pressure. And if that value stays after your linear valve offset failed, then I would say almost certain that your actuator is leaking and not the pump. But anyway, so what I did when my used cheap actuator failed, I actually went and started searching again, and eBay has some pumps. I mean actuators and pumps. And the thing with the eBay, you have to be careful. Those sellers, they will put a car, the whole car, in their listing, and they will list a good mileage, and some of them maybe show true mileage, but it doesn't mean that they're gonna send you this exact pump or actuator from this exact car. They're basically doing their advertisement like that. They have a bunch of actuators, bunch of pumps, and they're just using one listing as an advertisement, and you will buy this listing, but you will get a pump or actuator from who knows what kind of vehicle with who knows what kind of mileage. So be careful with the purchases from the eBay. Car-parts.com is, in my opinion, is a little bit more trustworthy, because if you're buying from a large salvage yards, in my opinion, they're not gonna go and try to trick you or lie about the car mileage. They're usually pretty accurate, and if they show mileage that the car has 40,000, I tend to trust them, although it's not a guarantee. So I went online and started looking for a new actuator, and the lowest price I could find at a time was about $250, $270, and the brand new pump from a dealer was $580, so basically a double. I decided to go with the new pump. I decided I'd rather spend another $250 and be sure that in case if that code is gonna come up in a little while, I know exactly where the problem is. I know exactly that it's gonna be a pump itself, because the actuator is gonna be brand new. So I went that route. I bought a brand new actuator from a dealer, $580. With the tax, it was right at around $600. So replaced it, and car is been driven for about a month now. My daughter went to Pennsylvania on this car from North Carolina, from Charlotte, North Carolina to Pennsylvania and back with no issues. She's been driving it as a daily driver. So brakes work great. As soon as I replaced the actuator, the linear valve offset went through in the first try, and everything works fine. So conclusion is, if you got this code and you got this bill, for some people even showed on forums $3,000 in repairs, I would recommend going this route. I would recommend finding parts where you know almost guaranteed that the mileage is accurate. Get a low mileage donor parts if you can. If you can't, I would go through a dealer and buy new parts and install them. Install parts yourself. It's definitely not as intimidating as it looks. So if you have any questions, please write in comments below. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And yeah, good luck.